All right, welcome everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen. And today I have with me my neighbor, Sierra. Sierra, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Kyle?
Doing well. Excited to talk about your travel experiences and talk about nutrition while traveling. I know that's something that's a big deal for me when I travel, is being able to maintain my nutrition. And you're the expert on that. So excited to hear your thoughts and experiences with that.
Well, I got lots.
Awesome. So you're telling me before we hopped on here that there's a few different type of people that you see when it comes to nutrition and traveling.
Yes, I feel like the three main people are the people that just they go on vacation and they don't want to think about it. They don't care about nutrition. They just want to eat whatever, which is probably majority of people. And then you have people who they might have the goal of like wanting to lose weight, or they're more athletic and active, and they still want to stick with their goals but be more relaxed and still allow themselves to have, like ice cream or pizza or foods that they normally wouldn't have. And then you have people who are very like athletic based, and they have to be like super precise. Like I had to for a bodybuilding show that I was doing, when I traveled a couple of times during that season of life, I had to be super, super specific with my nutrition, which was probably the most challenging thing. But those are like kind of the three main categories I feel like most people fall into. And I would say the easiest one is definitely like being more relaxed while still being on track. It's a little bit easier to just kind of go with guidelines more than just like rules or strict tracking.
Yeah. I feel like it's hard, in normal life to keep track of your nutrition, let alone while you're traveling and focusing on all these different things.
Yeah. Which is why a lot of times when I have clients or for myself, it's a lot of mindset and lowering the expectation that you have. Because a lot of times when people go and they are like, I'm going to be, super good, I'm going to not eat any junk food, or, they have expectations that they would normally have at home. That's where people struggle the most, because then they go on vacation, and if they, have family that they're going to see, guaranteed there's a meal that they anticipate.
That's
and then they just eat everything and then come back and they're super, just like super discouraged.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for everybody, including myself. Just like try to lower the expectation if you can, and come up with a few like main things that you want to try and accomplish while you're gone. So things like you could prioritize protein, prioritize maybe moving a little bit every day. So if you work out normally, maybe take like 10 minutes at the beginning of your day and do a little body weight workout or something, or drinking water. It can be simple things. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, definitely keeping it simple, but still like making progress, like you said, that seems like a good way to go in my mind, at least.
Yes. Yeah. And that's kind of the approach that I had. I was telling you, so me and my husband went to Italy for our honeymoon, and that was probably the biggest trip that I focused on the little things. Because we had gelato like every single day. We had like coffee every day. We didn't necessarily exercise, just we were walking a ton anyway, and just enjoying, being together. But prioritizing protein was a big one for me, at least when I was there. Just like trying to find things that like had a main protein source in it, and then everything else was kind of free game.
Yeah.
And okay.
Italy's a hard place to stay on track with your goals, I feel like.
Yeah.
You got the pasta, you got the gelato, pizza. I know when I was there last year, I think it was like 9 days, I walked a ton.
Yes.
And still came home heavier than I had left.
Yeah.
I was like, how did this happen?
Yeah. And some people have like the opposite effect, because same thing happened to me. My husband, on the other hand, he came home and he was like 5 pounds like less. He had lost weight while he was there, but we were eating so much food.
Yeah.
But
so much good food over there.
Yeah.
So what was it like being over there? Like when you were there, did you seek out specific protein sources, or did you just like when you went to a restaurant, you tried to pick something that fit with your goal?
So I think for the most part, it was like I would try to look at menu items that had a protein source in the description, if that makes sense. Like grilled chicken with like the pasta or whatever, or shrimp with pasta. A lot of the food in Italy is very carb heavy.
Yeah.
So that one was challenging. And that's where a lot of times I'll tell people bring protein like snacks or protein sources with you. Things like protein powder is a big one if you drink protein shakes, or like jerky, just little things that you can have with you. Because in a place like Italy, it's super hard to prioritize the protein, just because of the diet they have there. So that was one thing we kind of did, is like went to a grocery store, bought a few things that we could have at our Airbnb, and I kind of just like supplemented with those things in addition to what we would eat while we were out and about, for the most part.
I'm curious, you brought up the like bringing protein powder with you. Is that something you typically do when you travel?
Yes, for me personally, yeah, because I always have a goal, and most of the time it's muscle related. So yeah, biggest thing I usually bring is just like a bunch of Ziploc bags with like pre-measured out protein. I've had occasions where I will get to wherever I'm traveling to, and I'll go to a grocery store and buy a canister of protein powder. And like another thing too is protein is very like satiating. It makes you feel full. So sometimes that can be a helpful tool if you know that you're going to eat out and it's going to be a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of fats. You can use like a protein shake before you go out, and it helps kind of have something in your stomach, so it's not like you're eating a ton of food, extra food. Yeah,
definitely. So. It probably helped me. You know, you talked about gelato. I don't know why, but when I travel, like in my normal life, I don't really crave ice cream or gelato. Like I hardly ever eat it normally.
Yeah.
But when I travel, I crave it like every single day when I'm traveling.
Same.
And it's really easy to go find a spot when I'm traveling and just ruin my diet for the day.
I feel like it's easy. Like when you're on vacation, it's just like, you just want to eat all the things, like the stuff you normally wouldn't eat. Cause it's like, it's special. You're, you know, out of town, you're doing something fun. Like you want to be able to enjoy those things.
And I feel like too, like in a place like Italy, you know, it's part of the culture to try the foods and stuff like that. So I like personally want to like experience the culture that way as well.
Exactly. And like for what we did, it might not have been the most realistic thing to be like, oh, we're, you know, going to try and prioritize protein or like, you know, whatever. It might have been more realistic to focus more on like the movement piece or the water. So like combination of moving for 10 minutes, knowing that we were going to walk all day too. And then focus on trying to stay hydrated and drink water. That might have been a little bit more realistic in hindsight, I think. Because somewhere like Italy or somewhere similar in Europe, it's a lot harder to track food like that as well. Because like here in the United States, a lot of times you can look up menus ahead of time. You can find nutritional information for some restaurants if you're like really trying to track accurately. If you go out of the United States, good luck.
I can imagine, especially going to like, you know, a third world country, like good luck trying to find what the nutrition is.
And again, it's kind of just like finding what your guidelines are that are realistic for where you're going and what your goal is as well.
So where all did you go in Italy when you were there?
Oh boy, everywhere. Everywhere? So we started in Rome.
Okay.
So we had a total of like 2 weeks while we were there. So we spent the most time in Rome first. Went and saw like the Colosseum and just like all of the different like ancient kind of areas. I think we went to, is it St. John's or St. Peter's Cathedral?
Oh yeah, the Vatican.
Yes. Yeah. We went there. That was really incredible. That was probably my favorite part in Rome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was very beautiful. yeah, just did a ton of sightseeing there. And then for us, we actually rented a car.
Okay.
And we would drive from city to city and then just walk within the city
Mhm.
itself. So from there, we went to Florence, which was my personal favorite city. It was just
It's a beautiful place.
It was beautiful and like quaint. We went to the cathedral. I think it was like Santa Maria Fiore.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was really beautiful. I enjoyed that a lot, and of course, like got gelato and all the good foods. And we only stayed there 2 days, I think. So we didn't get to sightsee as much.
Mhm.
So from there, we went to Venice, of course.
Okay.
And for us, I can't believe this actually happened while we were there, but the first day we were in Venice, they shut down the whole city because they found a World War II bomb.
Oh, jeez.
That they hadn't been discovered, I guess, so they had to like take it out and detonate it in the sea.
Gosh.
So that day we backtracked and we went to the Tower of Pisa because it was like I don't know, it was like a couple hours to drive over, and we didn't have anything else to do, so we went and did that, and that was a fun little side trip because we hadn't planned on going to see that when we were there. And then the next day we were able to go into the city, and everyone talks about Venice and like how pretty it is and just like how breathtaking it is. Yeah, I mean, it is. It is. Like literally, you walk in, you're just like, oh my gosh, like the streets are water and there's all these boats and just like pretty, and like you take a gondola ride, which is pretty spendy, but very, very, very worth doing. Like if you do anything there, gondola ride for sure.
Dang. I need to go there. That's one place I haven't been.
That?
No, I have not been to Venice yet. My sister's talking about it as well, and I just really need to get there.
It's worth it for sure. Yeah, and do the gondola ride. Like it's really cool because the way, at least the one that we took, they kind of just like take you on a like almost a tour through a big part of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And like our guy, he was like super friendly, and he thought we were really cute because he's like, oh, little married couple, like, oh, let me take your picture. Okay, now kiss. And like all this stuff.
That's funny.
Because it's supposed to be like romantic.
Yeah.
But that was fun. And then, they have another really cool, I think, cathedral there too. I can't remember the name.
I'm sure all the big cities in Italy have really nice cathedrals.
I was going to say, they all have like cathedrals, and they have like big ones and smaller ones as well. So yeah, sometimes the smaller ones are nicer to go to because there's less tourists there. Yeah. But anyway, so from Venice, we went to a little town called Pescara, which was closer to the coastline.
Okay.
So we went over there. I think it was fine. It wasn't super like beautiful or anything, and there were definitely not very many tourists there. So it was more like we went there for the beach, basically, which kind of sucked because it was very cold and very windy while we were there. So I'm a weirdo. I was like, oh, I want to go to a CrossFit gym while I'm here. So yeah, that's what I did. I was like, oh, I'll find a CrossFit gym and I'll go and take a class. And yeah, I did that.
Were you able to find one?
I found 2 actually.
Oh, wow.
And I did a class both days that we were there. And if you've ever have you done CrossFit before ever? No? Okay. So the cool thing about CrossFit is all of the movements are the same. Like they use the same typical movements over and over. So being in Italy, most of the people there didn't speak English in the classes. So that piece was kind of hard, but because I already knew CrossFit and the typical movements that they use, I was able to kind of just follow along based on what they were doing. So if I was lucky, they had like one person that spoke a little bit of broken English that could kind of like tell me like, oh, we're going to do this like this many times or something like that. But
that's fun. Yeah. I I feel like that is a way that we don't think about traveling, but I think could be a fun way to like meet some people and get involved is to go to like a CrossFit gym or, go to a yoga class or something in another country.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience because like it's kind of just like a thing that I like to do is like if I go and travel, it's fun to visit different CrossFit boxes and just, see what their, not routine, just like what their box looks like, what the environment is like, how they like to style their workouts and things. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
You brought up a couple things that kind of got me thinking. When, like, on a day where you're renting a car or you're taking a long flight or a train or something like that, what does a nutrition look like, or how can you make sure you're staying on track with your goals for nutrition when you're like stuck on a plane for 10 hours?
Gotcha. So when you're in the middle of actually traveling, where you're going. Okay. Couple of different things. So again, I highly recommend bringing food with you. And specifically like protein snacks if possible. Bringing other things as well can be nice, like just like nuts or fruit bars or I'm trying to think what else. Dried fruit can be one. Protein bars, string cheese. It kind of depends too of like if you have a cooler bag with you or an area you could keep things a little cooler. You can get things like deli meat or like Greek yogurt. Those are good options as well. Because a lot of times when you're in an airport, one, everything's expensive. And two, finding healthy food in an airport is near impossible.
Impossible,
unless you're like in a specific airport that they have a restaurant that's specifically for healthy eating, which does happen on occasion. But most likely not. That's probably like one of the biggest things you can do, because guaranteed it's like if you do buy something in the airport, it's not going to be as healthy. It's going to be higher in calories, and plain food is still like it's not the greatest anyway. The food quality is just like meh. Unless you have like first class or something.
Well, even then, all that stuff is prepackaged and everything. Like probably not the best food.
So those are probably the biggest things you can do is like in advance try to pack things that you can take with you that you can have on the plane or while you're waiting in the airport. That can go the same way for like if you're in a car. Like same thing. It might be easier in a car to have a little cooler with like extra food in there. Sandwiches is a good one just because you can make it high protein and it's easy to put together, and you can like have it for the day or whatever, for if you're driving all day or a couple hours, whatever. Water is still a big one. It's really easy to get dehydrated when you're traveling, especially on an airplane. So highly recommend bringing an empty water bottle with you and then fill it when you're in the airport. And try to drink as much as you can, which kind of sucks because like if you drink too close to the plane time, then you have to get up and pee all the time.
I always try to time it out. Like I go right before, get on the plane, and then wait as long as I can.
I'm really weird where I will try to chug a bunch of water like before we even get to the airport, and then once I'm at the airport, a lot of times I don't even drink because I'm like, I don't want to have to use the airplane bathroom. I'm just weird that way.
Those are not the best places.
I think they're kind of nasty. So if I can avoid it at all costs, I will. So that's not what I would recommend to people. But I don't know. If you're trying to avoid the airplane bathroom, I guess you could do that.
That's a whole other thing. I totally agree with, bringing stuff that you can take with you, rather than having to buy things at the airport. Especially since COVID happened, like some airports I know, like the food places don't stay open as late or something like that, or they're not open as early. There's not as many options. And so just like having something just in case, like you can't get a meal, I think is really nice as well. Because I've gotten stuck where I've like oh, I have no food, nothing's open.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nice to have, a protein bar with you or something like that.
Yeah. And for those occasions when like you are in an airport and for whatever reason you just don't have any resources for you, sometimes finding things like a Starbucks, like most airports have a Starbucks somewhere or something equivalent to that. You can still find pretty healthy alternatives there. Some of their breakfast wraps or breakfast sandwiches are still good like options if you need something to eat. So that's probably the number one place I go if I need something just to help pull me over or, ran out of food or something.
I always need coffee, so I always go there.
Right? Sometimes airports will also have, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's like it's almost like a mini mart with like a bunch of travel essentials. It'll usually have snacks and food. Both me and my husband have had a couple of times that we've gone in there. And a lot of times they'll have like beef jerky. They'll have wraps that have, turkey or eggs or something in that way in them. So those are probably the two best options when you're like in a pinch and you just need something. You can always look in there and
and for me, like nutrition, like maintaining your nutrition and stuff like that, I feel like I think we make it too hard on ourselves. I think, especially when traveling, like just taking the extra second to maybe, look in that mini mart for like a protein bar versus like a candy bar kind of thing.
Right. You have to have the mindset ahead of time of like, what is it that you need and what is it you're looking for? I track my food quite a bit. So most of the time I already have an idea of what I want or what I need, what I might be lacking. Because sometimes it is like a carbohydrate. It's like I haven't had very much for some reason. It's like I just need like a fig bar or something, just something to kind of get me over to my numbers. And that's more in line with like if you're trying to track a little bit more accurately for something that you might be doing.
Yeah, so talk about that. What if you're traveling and you're really tracking your nutrition?
Whole nother ball game.
How is that going to work?
All right. Well, so for me, this is what I did because we had probably 2 or 3 different trips that we either flew or drove somewhere, and I was in the middle of preparing for the bodybuilding show, which was probably the one time I had to really be specific. So one thing I did, and not everyone does this, I brought a food scale with me.
Okay.
Because I had to track everything. I had to weigh everything out. So I just brought a small food scale with me in my backpack. And that way, wherever I was, whether I was in a hotel room or an Airbnb, whatever I had with me, I could still measure everything and make sure I was getting like the serving that I wanted. Which kind of brings me to the other thing that I usually do is I go to a grocery store, usually as soon as I get there, because most of the time, eating out all the time is not going to be feasible if you're trying to just be super accurate.
Yeah.
So if you have a hotel room with like a refrigerator and a microwave, that's perfect. Usually you can get like deli meat or string cheese, stuff that you would normally eat, I guess, a little bit more in your regular diet. You can kind of shop for those things as you need and take them with you. So that's what I did. Again, I got a whole bunch of protein sources because majority of the time what would happen is I would have breakfast that I could control. And then lunch and dinner usually wasn't as controllable because we were going out or going to a family's house, which in that case meant a lot more communication with my husband or the family, whatever, trying to make as much accommodation as possible, which is really hard for people. It's kind of awkward sometimes. So if we went out to a restaurant, most of the time I would look for the menu ahead of time. So some restaurants, at least in the US, you can find a menu ahead of time, and I would look for something that had like a protein and a vegetable with it. And then if it had like fries or something, I'd kind of just go with it and just anticipate extra carbs and fats in my day. So I'd try to anticipate what the day might look like at the very, very beginning. So that if I'm eating breakfast at my hotel room, maybe it's almost all protein and no fat and carbs because I knew I was going to consume more of that later in the day. Sometimes certain restaurants have like nutrition information already, so I would be able to enter all of that into MyFitnessPal ahead of time, be able to track everything around that. So some places like Olive Garden, Red Robin, Applebee's, Safeway, Jimmy John's, those are all places I've done that.
Is MyFitnessPal, is that the app you recommend?
Yeah, it's the main app that I use for pretty much everybody, and for myself. It's probably the easiest to use if you're tracking macros or just calories in general. It has a pretty good breakdown of almost everything. So
that's good. I know that's huge to have a lot of that kind of already built into it. So you just have to go plug in like, I ate this food.
Yeah. And the nice thing too is if you've been using it for a long time, it already has a history of the typical foods that you eat. So it does make it a lot easier as you use it more. It's just like you already know what to look for. And again, sometimes too, like for certain things in a restaurant, they might not have it on the menu, but sometimes in the past, people have entered things.
Yeah.
And you can look those up in MyFitnessPal and still use those.
Yeah, that's nice.
So it is hard to be super on point with macros when you're traveling. So it's ultimately about how much you can control and just doing the best you can, because it's not going to be 100% accurate the way it would be if you were at home.
Yeah.
So it's controlling as many variables as you can while still knowing that it's like, it's okay if, it's not perfect.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of a good thing for life. It's like you can control what you can control and like do whatever you can to control those parts of it, but just know like there's going to be outside variables that you just got to deal with.
Yeah. And that's for like everything. Like, it's a good mindset to have. It's just like control what you can and like it's going to be okay, whatever you can.
Yeah. I was listening to something the other day. It was like, obviously you can control what you can control, but you can also control how you react to the things that you can't. So you can get really upset by like, my whole nutrition's off for the week because of this meal or something. Or you can be like, you know what, it's okay. It happens. Like I'll make it up or something like that.
And it's crazy how much your behaviors can change between those two mindsets as well. Because if you have that mindset of like, I'm going to do the best I can and, I'm going to leave the rest, like it's going to be okay, the part that I can control, you end up actually making better decisions overall than if you have the mentality of like, oh, I screwed up. Because then you just end up screwing up even more because you're like, I've already gone off track.
Yeah.
I might as well just like throw the whole day away.
Yeah.
So over the term of your vacation, you're a lot more consistent in having that mindset for sure.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. One other thing I thought of was like when I'm in my normal daily life and routine and stuff like that, I am pretty strict about like my nutrition and stuff like that. With kind of the anticipation that, hey, I'm going to go travel next week or next month and know that, it's not going to be perfect and kind of use like that travel as like my kind of rest week or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that a good mindset or am I just...
It can be. Yeah. And that's kind of like the other thing of like, if you've never like tracked nutrition while on vacation or never had like the mindset of like, I'm trying to go for this goal. Yeah, you can almost use that week as like, I think a refeed week is kind of what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
and
Where
like,
it's like
and
you
I think
can,
about it more in fitness. Like, I'm working really hard. I'm building up towards whatever my goal is, but it's good to rest a little bit too in there.
Yeah.
So using that as like a rest week.
yeah, you can
But I
still,
think that applies to nutrition.
yeah,
too.
yeah. So kind of having like a deload week and just
Mhm.
like a week where you kind of rest and
Yeah.
recover. Yeah, for sure. You could definitely do that where it's like you time it so that it's like during that time you don't have to worry about that as much, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know, that for me that just really works well, because then I come back like rejuvenated. Like, okay, I had my couple cheat meals and stuff like that. Like, I'm ready to get back to my normal routine.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I've done that quite as much, but talking to my brother John, he's done that before. Like, he went to Vegas to visit some friends, and he was in a pretty intense lifting program and working with his nutrition with me, and that was kind of something we went over. Is like he was going to take that time. He still worked out a little bit, but it was very like dialed back in intensity. He only worked out maybe 2 out of the 6 days that he was there, and the intensity was a lot less. And then nutrition wise, again, we kind of brought it back to, okay, get the calories that you need and the protein that you need. Because based on his goals, he's been trying to get stronger and bulk more, which just means that he's trying to put on more muscle. So those two things were a big component that he needed to stay on track. And again, which kind of allowed him to just go and like have pizza when they go out to eat, or Buffalo Wild Wings, whatever, wherever he went, and be able to focus more on, like you said, the recovery of that, because his training otherwise is very, very intense.
I feel like it's good to have a little bit of rest in there every once in a while.
Which is very underrated for some people, I think, because they think, oh, I have to keep working out like super, super hard all the time. It's like, no, you can have like a deload week in there, or like a rest week. That's normal.
I know, I like traveling because it forces me to be like that a little bit. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a little bit harder to do my normal routine, which is good, because I'm like always 110%. Relaxing is not in my vocabulary. One thing that I thought of when you said Vegas was alcohol.
Oh,
that's got to be a big one for nutrition.
Yes, it is. Okay. So I personally don't drink very much, but I have clients who do. And a lot of times I will encourage them to choose between dessert or alcohol. Just because both of those things are usually pretty calorie dense, especially if you're getting alcoholic drinks that are more like mixed, like margaritas and things that have extra added like juices and stuff like that. So desserts and mixed drinks are both pretty heavy in calories. So if you can choose one or the other, sometimes that's a little bit easier to monitor, I guess. If you want both, I mean, like, you can have both, but maybe deciding to have like one drink with the dessert instead of 3 or 4. Typically alcohol is actually even more calories per gram than like proteins, fats, and carbs. It's like, I think it's like 7 calories per gram or something like that. I'm not super, super familiar with like the breakdown of how that even works, but it's almost like alcohol is kind of its like separate category. So trying to, I think, have alcohol in moderation is probably like the best thing you can do. I
think for nutrition in general, that is probably one of the worst things for your nutrition.
It does make it hard. It does make it hard. Because those calories can add up pretty quickly because you're drinking them. And as you continue to drink, your decision-making skills go down as well, which means like, chips that might be on the table become more and more enticing as you get more and more alcohol in you, for sure.
That makes sense.
So
I've been there before.
I had one client who he would drink every single weekend, and he would drink pretty heavily. And he was trying to go for a 6-pack ab body look. And I was like, hey, it's okay if you drink, but it is going to make things a little bit slower. And just like throwing out here, like these are the calorie breakdown of like all of the drinks and stuff. And he had no idea. He was like looking at this chart I had sent him of just like different drinks and like how many calories were in each one. And he was like, dang, I've been drinking like a lot of like ABC and I had no idea. So
yeah, I don't think people realize how bad that is for your nutrition or your health.
It does make it harder. Yeah, I think it depends on like what your goals are and how relaxed you want to be. But it does make it a whole lot harder, especially if you do it a lot.
Yeah, I know that's been one of the big things for me over the last couple of years is like, especially when traveling, like you said, maybe having one drink or two with dinner and dessert like throughout the night versus like, spending all night drinking kind of thing. One, probably going to feel better in the morning. And be able to go do more of the travel stuff that I want to do. But also, not get so far off track of my goals too.
Sure. One trick I have heard someone say that they did where like they didn't want to worry too much about like how much they were drinking. They had the rule of for every drink they consumed, they had to drink a glass of water in between, which one helps with the hangover the next day. And two, you ended up getting, fuller quicker because like you're consuming a drink and then water and then a drink and then water. So you're going to end up consuming less alcohol overall. Anyway.
That makes sense.
So that was one trick somebody tried and they found that worked pretty well for them. And again, it's kind of just like trial and error, figuring out what works for you and what you're able to stay consistent with and stick to.
Yeah, and I feel like it's hard to, there's a generalization that you can make, but everyone's body's different. Everyone's, how they react to different things is different. So I feel like that's where an expert like you comes in, where you can coach someone.
That's like the hardest part when people ask me like, oh, what do you have people do? And it's like, depends on who you are.
Yeah. Well, any other like nutrition things you want to share with us? Anything else when it comes to travel and nutrition that is important for the listeners to know?
I think that we've talked about most everything that I wanted to say. I think overall, biggest thing you can do is just mentally get in the right mindset. It's probably like the biggest thing you can do, because no matter what you do on your vacation, if you can define what success looks like for you ahead of time and make it realistic, not according to the rules and guidelines that you have when you're at home, you're going to be a lot more successful for the long term. So lower the expectations and figure out what would you come back from the vacation feeling proud of yourself for, that you drank more water while you were there, or maybe you included vegetables at every meal while you were there, regardless of what else you ate.
It's terrible.
They're just examples. It's like, pick what would make you feel successful after returning from the trip. Because that's going to play a big piece in how you go forward from getting home from a vacation and getting back into normal routine as well.
Is that a hard transition, like coming back from a trip too?
Yeah. So if you have routines and habits already set up when you're home, try to jump into those as quickly as you can once you're home. Which take the realistic realization that it might take a couple of days to get back into things, and give yourself the grace of that. Of like, okay, I just got home. I'm going to be jet lagged. Like, I'm just doing the best I can to get back into, all the things that I was doing before I left. Because it's going to be hard to jump right back in. Kind of like when you get home and you have to go right to work. It's really hard to get back into that mindset of like, working and like getting back into those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know this actually is a good time for this podcast. I think it'll be out after I've already gone on this trip, but um, when we're recording this next week, I'm actually traveling for a family reunion.
Oh, nice.
So one bunch of people I haven't seen in 3 years, and there will be drinking. There will be, a lot of fun and celebration and stuff like that. And then I'm immediately going to come home and go to work the next morning.
Nice.
Actually, like less than 10 hours after I get back, I have to go to work.
That sounds terrible.
So, it got me thinking like, okay, like I know it's going to be tough next week. I know it's going to be hard to like stay on my normal routine. I'm going to have 3 or 4 days of travel where it's going to be really tough and things there's not a lot of things that are going to be in my control next week. And then it's going to be tough coming back. But, talking with you about all of this, I'm like, okay, I know that there's going to be some cheat meals, some cheat days in there. But I'm going to come back and, do the best that I can.
Yeah.
And just know that, hey, it's going to be tough, but I'll do what I can do.
Right. Yeah.
So, awesome. Well, anything else that you want to share?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Any travels coming up for you?
I wish. Not especially. For the most part, it's just camping trips.
Okay.
I have an event coming up that I've been training for, but yeah, probably no vacations until like the holidays.
Okay.
So nothing set in stone yet.
Yeah. Do you find it easier to, like, for a camping trip, is it fairly easy to stay on your normal routine, or is that still a challenge?
Yeah, because a lot of times when you're camping, you're being active anyway. You're usually bringing your food with you. So you're in complete control of what you bring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you bring extra like treats and snacks with you, like that's fine. I personally usually bring a couple of things and then try to spread them out throughout the whole camping trip, and yeah, just plan accordingly for those. I feel like it's a lot easier actually camping because it's like, you have complete control over it. You're not necessarily where a bunch of like restaurants are gonna be and stuff like that. I think to me, actually, the hardest traveling experience is with family. Honestly, if I'm going to visit family or going to a family reunion, those are the hardest situations to be in because, if you're doing like a family potluck or whatever, or you're at someone's house for dinner, sometimes there can be the expectations from other family members that you're going to eat all the food that they prepared.
Yeah.
Or, you're going to have this certain dessert that they made. And, sometimes there might be fear too that you're going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are probably like the hardest situations to try and control your nutrition.
Yeah, I agree.
Be on track. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, this was a lot of good information, Sierra. I really enjoyed it. It sounds like you can maintain your goals, you can maintain your nutrition goals and everything like that. It takes a little bit of effort.
Yeah, and it looks a little bit different than it would when you're at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very maintainable to still progress towards your goals and still enjoy traveling and enjoy foods.
Yeah.
And ice cream and
yeah. Oh,
the things.
One thing I was thinking about too, like with alcohol and coming back and giving yourself grace and all of that. When I look back on a trip, I want to feel good about the trip too, and knowing that, like, hey, I know I didn't stick 100% to my nutrition plan while I was traveling, but knowing that, like, hey, I had a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. I was, for the most part, on track. Like, I'm going to feel really good about a trip like that.
Yes.
Versus like, I'm just going to eat a bunch of gelato and, drink a bunch. And then I'm going to feel terrible about that trip when I get back.
Yeah. It's almost like you have a better confidence for yourself if you can still maintain like good nutrition and good habits while you're on vacation.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a very good feeling when you come back and you feel like you were pretty successful. And a lot of times, like my husband listens to me talk on the way home when we're coming home, like, I feel like I did pretty good. Like, I did all of these things. Like, I had this one day that was kind of bad, but it's okay because I like did better the next day. And yeah.
Yeah, I think while you're on the trip too, I think it's actually probably more fun too. It's like, yeah, okay, you know, I'm going to go out and enjoy this, but you know, I'm not going to go so far off the rails. Like, I think if you're somewhat sticking to your plan, it's actually a more enjoyable trip.
Yeah,
rather than just having all the.
I feel like that too. Yeah, because otherwise, if you like just let yourself do whatever, a lot of times you deal with like a lot of guilt, either while you're there or when you're on your way home.
Yeah, and
especially if you're there, like you don't want to feel guilty while you're traveling. That just ruins it. So, yeah, that's where I really believe in like trying to still stick with like good healthy habits while you're traveling, because in general it just it makes it a lot more enjoyable and a better experience overall. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Sierra, thanks again. Where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me everywhere. No. I have a website, reformnutritioncoaching.com, and that's my personal nutrition coaching business. I have an Instagram, which is also Reform Nutrition Coaching, and I have a Facebook page, same, Reform Nutrition Coaching.
Perfect. I know I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast as well, and getting some advice from you on nutrition. It's helped me out a lot too. Nice. So, awesome. Well, Sierra, thanks again, and look forward to seeing you around the world soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yep. Bye, everyone. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify and Anchor. And now you can also listen on YouTube. Links are in the description below. If you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page and or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my new show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to discuss one specific travel topic, whether that be questions I get from listeners, sharing some souvenirs that I've bought over the years, or discussing one particular city or country that I've been to, and so much more. You'll be able to listen to that via Spotify and Anchor as well, and be able to see the video version, which I'm really excited about, on YouTube. So check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. And thanks again for listening, and I will see you around the world soon.